fried on Friday and is going back and forth.
Oh,
And so talking and explaining more without my computer.
okay. So before you even start, let me just give a little bit of an intro. I sent out a little bit about Rav Barnea last week. I just make a couple of very brief comments with the caveat of miktzat shivcho b'fanav, that you only say part of a person's praise in front of them. And this truly is just the tip of the, I would say tip of the fork, tip of the iceberg. Okay, Rav Barnea is a master educator. By the way, I'll ask everyone, if you don't mind, to put yourselves on mute. If you have a question, toch kedei, obviously take yourselves off mute. Master educator, a Rav, tremendous Talmud Chacham, an archaeologist, a guide, and on that list, the thing
funny.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if he's funny. But one of the things I will add also is that I'm just thrilled to call him a friend. We've known each other over 20 years, and there have been times where we didn't talk for 2 years, even 3 years maybe. But it's always like we just talked. And when I call him up with a question, he's always got an answer and a place to look, and it's just amazing. Also, I sent you a little bit of information about Foundation Stone, the fact that he has re-engineered the map of Israel for education. It could go on and on. And I'm sure Barnea, did I say it exactly how you wanted me to, Barnea? Anyways, I will tell you one very brief anecdote.
Address where to send the check, but
obviously,
that, everything.
With lots of zeros. I will tell you one brief anecdote that will illustrate his sense of humor. I had worked with Barnea. Actually, he was our guide on a few trips when I first started bringing groups to Israel. And as you rely on your guide to give you information, history, knowledge, and it was just so fantastic. And we were in the walking. I don't remember, you've probably done this with multiple groups, but I remember this like yesterday. We were walking from our hotel towards the old city, and on the side, somewhere we were taking this little hill down, and there was a burnt out car. And someone said to Barnea, says, like, what's that? He says, oh, let me tell you. And he starts going this whole story about this was a Jordanian car, and this is just before 67, and all. And he stopped, and he said, you believe me, don't you? We also said, well, why not? He says, it's a 1987 car, whatever. It was like nothing. He just made it all up on the spot. So what he will say tonight is definitely authoritative. It's not about a car. And basically what I told him is that where we're holding right now in Navi, and then the main topic would be Chizkiyahu, or anything that goes tangentially with that, anything he wants to talk about, because whatever it will be obviously it'll be outstanding. Okay, without any further ado, an introduction. What's it? I didn't hear what you just said.
Rob Barnea mentioned money. Does he seriously want us to pay him?
No, don't worry about that. Thank you.
No.
But thank
I
you,
do,
Arya.
because it's a profession.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Arya. Thank you. Okay.
I'm in a constant state of fundraising. You could.
It's true.
It's not. Yeah, fair. Very good. Anyway, it's an honor and pleasure to be here. Actually, I'm here, but it's a pleasure to be with you on Zoom. Right, and it's particularly appropriate that Rabbi Shendelov asked for Chizkiyahu, because he gave me a gift many years ago of a book on Sancheriv's palace, who was the nemesis of Chizkiyahu, which even my son used for his classes, so it's already second generation. I want to stress that Chizkiyahu is on the tip of a major change. Whereas I have to move, my computer's turning on.
Go ahead, whatever you need to do.
Here we go. Where in Navi until now, let's say from Shmuel and Melachim, our enemies are countries. The king of
Oh, you're muted. You're muted. There.
The king of Mitzrayim, and this is at the onset of the age of empires. That's not my phrase. That's what it's called. I learned it from Professor Oded Lipschitz at Tel Aviv University, but that's what it's called, the age of empires. So that Achaz, Chizkiyahu's father, is threatened, and this has happened before, but on a local level, right? Abasha, the king of Judah, is threatened by the king of Israel, so he calls a Ben Hadad of Damascus, come knock the guy in the north and get him off my back. Here, Achaz is turning to Tiglat-Pileser, who is the Assyrian emperor controlling other kingdoms, who has a policy of exile, of taking over a country and sending out the inhabitants, and thus scattering them like pepper and salt over a wide range. So you're not in your own country, you don't have your own organic community, and there's no way you're going to rebel. You don't even know the language, is nothing. And Tiglat-Pileser smashes the north of Israel, Eon, Avel Beis Macha, Kedesh, that the north of Israel takes a hit. Ultimately, over the next couple decades, Assyria, Ashur, is sending the 10 tribes into exile in 3 waves. It's a discussion between the Mefarshim what the order is, but in 3 waves. Ever Hayarden, the north, and finally Shomron, capital of Yisrael, falls. By the way, just before the last Seger, in response to an Arab initiative, the Shavei Shomron Midrasha was having open house every Wednesday, so you could come to Shomron. It's usually only Chol HaMoed, and I, at a half a year apart, run and schlep whoever my tourists are to Shomron for Chol HaMoed. It was every Wednesday, even just show up and go or take a tour for 10 shekels, and all of a sudden came the next Seger, but please look for it. So now Shomron has fallen. There is no more 10 tribes. There are no more 10 tribes. There is no more kingdom of Israel. And Chizkiyahu was all by his lonesome. And now comes Sennacherib. We're in, if you saw Prince of Egypt, you said you're playing with the big boys now. It's a completely different order of magnitude. And what I would like you to do is that when you hear the word Ashur, I want you not be able to sleep, to quake in your boots, to be absolutely frightened to the core, because if Ashur is on the warpath, nobody stands a chance. That's who Chizkiyahu was facing. And so when Yeshayahu tells Chizkiyahu, don't worry about, they're not even gonna throw an arrow against the walls. You have nothing to worry about. You have to understand what emunah that takes. And Chazal say that Shevnayahu, who was demoted in the course of these events, he had a higher position, goes to over, his position was the Isa Shel Abayis. He gets a special nevuah sent to him. You think you're so hot, you cut a kever out for yourself. He sends an arrow out saying, Chizkiyahu and his siato, his people, don't want to open up the gates, but we do. We're ready to open up the gates, and let you in. Just, what can we do? Sort of, so you know who your friends are when you come in, so that we don't get slaughtered. He gets castigated for that. But we know from alabaster and gypsum carved walls in Assyrian palaces how gruesome and how frightening Assyrian tactics were. I was just reading the life of Josephus today, which is primarily a brief, in-depth look at when he was commander of the Galilee rebellion and dealt with insurrection within his own forces. And twice somebody has his hand cut off, or is told, cut off your own hand and hang it around your chest. One time, pretty gruesome. And the commentary says, Daniel Schwartz says, that's how we dealt with, insurrection. And this is far worse. Now, the light isn't good enough to do this properly, but I took out this book, and you'll be able to find this online. You could go to the British Museum website, because they have the original brought from Iraq to London. This is a book, The Conquest of Lachish by Sennacherib. And this is a picture of the, making sure you can see.
Yeah.
This is a picture of an entire wall of Sennacherib's palace, which is now room 10 in the British Museum. It's like a comic book. It's showing you the whole story. So here's the sketch of it. It starts with the archers and the slingshots throwing from a distance a rain of shot. And now the people is moving in closer, ready for the attack.
Need to
And
move
now
down
the
just a little.
tanks, they had machines that would knock through the doors. The defenders would throw down torches. So there's a man here backhanding water to protect it. And then gradually coming in, and then you see people impaled. And then you see people being stripped alive and their bodies being ripped apart. And these are our relatives, because these are the people of Lachish. And there's no question about it, because this says, I, Sennacherib, the king, am accepting the booty and the submission of the people from Lachish. That's an Assyrian plaque. So there's no question what the topic is. Sometimes we have guesswork. It looks Egyptian, it looks Canaanite. Sometimes in one of the Assyrian palaces, we don't know. Here it says so right on the label. It's Sennacherib, and it's taking over Lachish. And then in the Navi, in Kings 2:18, and in Yeshayahu and Divrei Yamim, we're reading that the conversation between Chizkiyahu and Sennacherib and the go-betweens and sending Rav Shakeh to speak to him is happening with Lachish. So Lachish was a power center. There was the breadbasket. It was a tremendous force. It gets decimated and taken over. And then the conversation is between Jerusalem and Lachish. Fascinating. Hakafa Gimel, and then I'll stop for questions. Hakafa Gimel. The single biblical story with the most archaeological finds, geographically known places, architecture, walls, objects, inscriptions, is the conflict between Chizkiyahu and Sennacherib. Nothing else comes close. We've got the palace in Nineveh celebrating the fall of Lachish. We've got inscriptions where Sennacherib is talking about Chizkiyahu. There are 3 prisms. One is in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, one is in London, and one is in
Chicago.
The Oriental Institute in Chicago, yes. Where when you come to it in Chicago, by the time you get there, it's like the Liberty Bell Museum in Philadelphia. By the time you get there, it's set off. If you properly understand what you're leading to, you can't speak. You're so in awe of it. In the British Museum, it's just another object on the shelf, doesn't stand out at all. And in the Israel Museum, it's in the back. You could easily miss it, even though there's a little sign explaining it, but right, and you see the whole scene recreated from this wall relief to realize I'm standing in front of one of the 3 cylinders where he says, and as for Hezekiah, man of Judah, I trapped him in a city like a bird in a chain, in a cage, nobody came in and out. And you're the echo of the pasuk of Rav Shakeh saying that who of all the gods was able to stand against me? Why do you think your God is any different? Which is why they tore Kriya, right? You hear that tone in the in the cylinder itself. It's saying the same thing. I smashed this one, and I smashed this one, and I smashed this one, and I smashed this one, right? So you can go to Lachish and see these remains. You can go to a number of museums and see remains. And there's another inscription. I'm just looking to see if I can find you. There's another inscription that is called the bull inscription because it came off of a bull, that the pasuk says, it talks about how he sent talents of gold and silver to Sancheiriv. Sancheiriv says, I got talents of gold and silver from Chizkiyahu. It's the same number of talents of gold. There's a significant difference in the number of talents of silver. I don't have an explanation for that, right? But it's literally an echo of that pasuk. And the ability of Chizkiyahu to listen to Yeshayahu and to daven when you appreciate Ashur has to fill you with awe. There are many people whose career and whose decisions to be involved either in Torah or in archaeology were formed by this. I'm not. He's not my mentor, but I'm a student of Professor Israel Finkelstein of Tel Aviv, who at a surprise party for an honor that he got said, you were in the room, he pointed to this retiree, and you were in the room when so-and-so gave a class and connected this verse and Sancheiriv and Chizkiyahu, he said, that was it. I was smitten, right? And his whole career is biblical archaeology, right? And Kfira included, but that's his career in an honest scientific search for what does it all mean. But this connection is absolutely captivating. I was once sent a New Yorker who literally got on the plane with his wife to examine, was he going to stay within the fold of Judaism or not? And they sent him to me, right? So I had him for a couple of days. The first, I think it's the first thing we did. We went to the Israel Museum. We did a couple things like this. After 2 hours, we were done. He was in. And this seeing Chizkiyahu and Sancheiriv is part of what did that. When you say, I can read the verse, here's the person, he's talking about him, the echoes in the story, and I understand what it's referring to. And I'll just add for dessert for a moment that there were finds in the antiquities market by collectors of a seal that said Hezekiah, son of Achaz, king of Yehuda. The Israel Museum has one on display. And others said, listen, these are forgeries. Why would he have the sun be, why would he have the... And then Eilat Mazar found one in a controlled excavation at the bottom of a building of the time of the first temple near Har HaBayit, near the Temple Mount and the Ophel excavations. And so that showed that these are real, at least some of them. But once you found one real, it means, yes, it exists, and this is how to read it. And there's no way it could be faked. It was the bottom, no way it could be faked. There's another one there, which she reads as Yeshayahu HaNavi. Many people disagree, but obviously they're contemporaries, and it's very tempting, and she has a right to say it, that's what it says. Others say, no, there's 20 different possibilities of what it could be. Why would he call himself HaNavi? But right, that's how it was found in the same area. So in Chizkiyahu, the evil king is Sancheiriv, king of Assyria, and the Navi is Yeshayahu HaNavi. And we're over a century before we deal with Bavel and Tzidkiyahu and Yirmiyahu. Here we are with Sennacherib of Ashur and Yeshayahu and Chizkiyahu. That's the configuration. And when you say Chizkiyahu could have been Mashiach if he would have just said Shira, and this war would have been the war of Gog and Magog, when you appreciate the control Assyria had over the whole world. I went to London to see the Ashur Banipal exhibition. He's Sancheriv's grandson. And I walked into a room called World Domination. And you saw in every corner from a different part of the world, the Assyrian impact, the Egypt and deep into Arabia. Then you understand, oh, right. This could have been Gog and Magog. Sancheriv, as representative of the nations and with vassal kings obligated to come and fight with him and send their best armies and people coming against Yerushalayim, this could have been Gog or Magog, and Chizkiyahu could have been Mashiach if he would have sung and expressed it that way. You get it. Okay.
Okay, I do have, first of all, Adkan, for what you've done so far, thank you very much. Fascinating. I do have a specific question. And when we were learning Perek Yud Chet, I said to the group, I said, okay, I have no idea what this is. I said, I know who I'm going to ask, so hopefully you'll have an answer for this. How's that for a setup?
That's a setup. It's Adar. Go ahead.
Okay. So when Rav Shakeh first approaches the entourage he's going to speak to, it says, "Vayalu vayavo vayamdu bita'alat habrecha ha'elyona asher b'mesilat sedei koves." No clue what this is, where it is.
Now go to Isaiah 7:3.
Right. Yes. Okay, great.
Tell
now
them.
What?
Tell them. Tell your flock. Tell your flock.
Okay, go to Yeshayahu 7, Yeshayahu Zion, Pasuk Gimel. So it's Yeshayahu Zion Shalosh. Let me just open it myself. Hold on. As soon as I get it, Yeshayahu, Tanakh. I don't know, Yeshayahu always sounds better in English. Isaiah 7, Pasuk Gimel, where it starts, Vayomer Hashem el Yeshayahu. Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. ויאמר השם ישעיהו, צאנה לקראת אחז, אתה ושר ישוב בניך, אל קצה תעלת הברכה העליונה, אל מסילת שדה חובס.
So here it's a little more specific. Go to the edge of a ta'ala, which is a man-made channel of the upper pool, to the path or to the area of the launderer's field, an area where using the water would be easy to launder with, maybe with earth that was good for the materials for laundering. There are 4 opinions in archaeology of where they are. One is considered disproved, but the one who held it was a big expert who passed away. He can't defend himself, as they say. So David Amit alav Shalom held that it's the pool, which is called the Mamilla pool, opposite the what used to be the Tax Museum, which is now the Waldorf Astoria, which was just sold, on the path towards where the Holocaust Museum will be. So there's the
Arab cemetery, the Arab cemetery,
yes,
in quotes, yeah,
in the middle of the Arab cemetery. Others say no, that's clearly Byzantine. It's not from that time. Wrong. Okay. Another is that there is a pool called Hezekiah's Pool in the Christian Quarter, and when they were refurbishing in Jaffa Gate, they found waterways with water coming in and out. Another is that it's against Dan Bahat's opinion when you walk the Western Wall tunnel, and by the way, the whole area is about to change, but right, and you walk the Western Wall tunnel, and then you come to a dead end, so to speak, and you go up a little staircase, and you enter an ancient aqueduct, and then you come into a large pool, and then you're outside. So Dan Bahat, and the official signage there follows Dan Bahat, says it's a Hasmonean tunnel predating Herod, because Herod's Western Wall cuts it off, therefore it's earlier. Gabi Barkai of Bar Ilan University, emeritus, says, no, this is the that ta'ala bringing water from the upper pool, and this is the one that's referred to here. And I forgot what the 4th opinion is. I forgot the 4th opinion. You're looking for a place where there's a place for water to gather, preferably a spring, and for gravity to bring it and to convey it, but which is somewhere outside the city, because you're in the middle of a field, the launderer's field, which doesn't have to be far from the city, but it's a place where you go to it, especially here, go out and head him off at the pass, so to speak, right? He doesn't want to speak to you. He's a Russia, but you go, this is where I want you to, you'll intercept him at this point, right? Just a funny story, you know, the Rav Shar Yashuv Cohen, alav Shalom, who became chief rabbi of Haifa, who fought in the Haganah, who went into the Chevy, He was the son of the Nazir. And he was very upset once. They said, "What's upset?" He said, "I don't like my name here, Shar Yeshuv Binecha." He said, "We wanted to call you Maher Chashbaz, so be, don't be upset. It could have been worse
Hey, vey.
of the
No, no, no.
Mashiach coming." Right,
Yes, that's funny.
right.
Before anybody else might want to have a question, I have one more question. Now, I told you we've gotten up to the point where Yeshayahu has now updated Chizkiyahu that he's going to live. And we're in the process right now talking about the power of tefillah and Zchut Kavod and all. But so we really haven't talked about something that's in your backyard, which I forgot to mention to everybody that Barnea is lucky enough to live in the old city for a very long time, Baruch Hashem. The broad wall that we have not really spoken about that yet at all. But if you could just give a little bit, so have like a little preview of this broad wall, what it is he did, and etc. If you could.
The excavations in after the 6-Day War got underway in 1969, and Professor Nachman Avigad was about to take a sabbatical and work on issues that he wanted to work on, but he was offered to head this. Should I not? And he started with it and didn't know if anything would be left. They said everything's destroyed, and what are we going to find? And then they found a little piece of a piece of plaster with the menorah inscribed on it, which had been decoration. He said, "Okay." And
Hook, line, and
the
sinker.
yeah, and the area that is I don't want to call it my front yard, that my house is adjacent to, has a wall that's 7 meters over 20 feet across, 25 feet across, which is much thicker than the normal city wall of 2,700 years plus, etc. It's exceptional. There may be one other wall like it that I've heard about that I haven't seen from that period. And the question is why? And the suggestion is, when will you find an armored vest? Only after there's bullets. When will you find masks? You know that those masks came sometime after March 2020. I used to tell people that when I came to the Kotel in 1968, the kippot were a rough, icky feeling cardboard. And I think it was 1992 that they switched to this nice, soft, white paper. So you'll be able to tell when is it before 1992 or after 1992. Another mashal is baseball bats. Everybody would say, "Oh, the regulation bat changed in 1964, so this baseball bat is from before." I worked with an archaeologist, Leo Rechenberger, who's an expert on pipes. He can tell you if it's a 300-year-old Turkish pipe or a 200-year-old Turkish pipe. Yeah, the different areas over here. So the suggestion is that the only reason why you have that thick wall is because you now have a weapon that's capable of penetrating city walls, which is the Assyrian tank. So here's a close-up of the drawing of Sancheiriv and with the inscription. And let me get you the tanks. Here's the tank that's capable of breaking through regular city walls. So this wall, my front yard, is so thick that it can't break through. And we see it was very professionally engineered. It has 2 walls, and then you fill in the middle with rubble, and it has projections to avoid blind spots. And you can't see it now, but when it was excavated, it had a water channel to take out water, so the water shouldn't ruin it. It's very well made. And the question is how much further goes in either direction. They wouldn't allow them to dig further because they needed the access of the next little piece of the street, Flugat the Kotel, to stay open so trucks and little carts could go through. If somebody came now with money, they would allow that dig to continue. And Rav Yisrael Ariel, who has the Israelite tower under his house, which is from the end of the Churban Beis Hamikdash, would love to see it dug up between here and there. So if somebody wants to fund a dig, we'll be able to get a permit, shut it down for a close time. They're doing digs all over the place now. You'd be able to do this also. We don't know where it fits in. Professor Avigad said, look, it's well worn on one side, it's not worn on the other. Therefore, this is the inside of the city, that's the outside of the city. I would like to disagree and say the city went further north, but that would take a lot of work to prove. That's on the level of a doctorate to prove that, and I have a different topic, so I have to wait with that.
Nice.
It's actually sitting at the edge of a valley, which drops down. So it has a controlling position. You don't sense it now because everything has been filled in. But for example, just a few feet away in the Cardo, you see, oh, look down and look down and look down, right? So there's actually a valley dropping down and it's on the crest of a hill. So it's in a very strategic protective area and it's busting through earlier buildings. And again, this is the first area, that's what I wanted to say. This is Nachman Avigad's area A. When you start digging, your first area is A, then it's B. It went up to 26 areas, so it went into double letters. But this is area A, and wall number 555 is cutting through building 363. Right? You see that there was a powerful structure that was there. Now, Professor Avigad suggested, if you look in Isaiah chapter 22, especially verses 9 and 10, that perhaps this is castigating, where Yeshayahu is castigating the people of Yerushalayim. You tore down homes to fortify the wall. In other words, we don't have time to import building materials from somewhere else. Everybody out. You tear down those buildings and you build with it right there. And that this is a reference to that. The Pashtus in the Mefarshim is that Yeshayahu was talking about the people in the time of the Churban and ranking them out for their little faith, etc. But you can certainly understand the simple explanation that Yeshayahu was talking in his own time, and we're talking about filling in these gaps, and instead of turning to Hashem, you're doing this. But, right, there's a balance over here. You have to make your hishtadlus, your normal efforts, and then the question is, why is Chizkiyahu being criticized? Because remember that the Gemara says 3 things hodulo and 3 things lo hodulo. And blocking the Gihon spring so the Assyrians couldn't get at it was lo hodulo. So and the question is whether it's really the Hezekiah's tunnel that we talk about there or whether it's another tunnel, but either way, he went to great lengths. And were all those lengths part of, I have to do my part? Or is there a panic there and an overreaction? And then when you understand the Syria, you have to understand the chilling fear of it. But here I told you, don't even worry about it, and you're going a little bit overboard. That shows something lacking in there. There's a very slight thing. That's a suggestion. I don't want to sign off on it, but there's an interesting dynamic going over here between the lens to which the protection went to vis-a-vis the promises of Yeshayahu. The end game is they daven, and on Pesach night, on both nights, in the poems, for those in Chutz La'aretz, it's both nights, just a memory. Remember, there used to be such a thing that one of the miracles that happened in the middle of the night of Pesach is this salvation of Chizkiyahu and of Yerushalayim and killing the Assyrian soldiers by the hand of the Malach.
As a matter of fact, sorry to interrupt you. As a matter of fact, last week or 2 weeks ago, we looked at the Targum Sheni and the Perek Vav of the Megillah Esther that shows all those things that happened by Laila Hahu, and that's listed as being one of those things.
Yofi. Yeah. So the Gemara in Bracha says, it's a Gemara, but one of the things, the places which if you see, you make a bracha, Shas Nisim Lavosenu, is if you see where the Assyrian camp was. Mm-hmm. Now, we have a good suggestion pointing to Professor David Ushishkin where the Assyrian camp was against Lachish, because the drawing that I just showed you shows the Assyrian camp, And he says it's realistic, and that where Moshav Lachish is overlooking Lachish, and that's where the camp was. Professor Oded Lipschitz has found a similar place facing Azekah, which it suggested that Sencherev took over Azekah also, that there's an Assyrian text about capturing Azekah, which Professor Nadav Neman and others say is Sencherev, and he's suggesting, and they're going to make something there. The Parks Authority is going to make a place where you're going to sit on the throne and be Sencherev and overlook Azekah. It's in planning. It's very cute.
That's funny.
Right? So I wanted to tie that if you go up in a helicopter, which I've done twice, don't go over Harabais, that's usher, right? And if you're Kohen, watch out for Harazasim, it's tricky, right? Because the Tuma goes up, right? But if you're in a helicopter overhead, then you know you're seeing the place. It's somewhere over here. Just like it says that by David HaMelech, that why he reached, when he's running from Shalom, he reached the place where he was always daven and Harazasim. The Mefarshim have different approaches. One of the approaches is he didn't know exactly where it was going to be in Harabais, but he knew that overlooking this hill, I'm looking at Makam and Migdash. Is that specific enough to make the bracha on the Machane Ashur, or is it not? But at any rate, that's the level that which we respect, revere, and relate to this miraculous event of Yerushalayim being saved.
Fantastic.
And that's why we as archaeologists can't stand it, because we have no destruction layer. So in Lachish, the destruction of Sancheiriv means, everything before that, all this pottery is up to this time. And then pottery develops again. Then the next destruction is from Bavel. And Lachish Strata 3 and Lachish Strata 2 are linchpins for everything else. We don't have in Yerushalayim because Yerushalayim wasn't destroyed. It kept on.
Beautiful. There's a question. Someone else had, fantastic. Someone else had a question.
Yeah, my name's Arnold. It's wonderful having you here. Can I ask a question?
You could ask a question after I thank you for writing your book on the Jerusalem.
Thank you for all those wonderful comments you made. It's incredible. Why do you think Hezekiah revolted in the first place? Did he have to? Do you think Yeshayahu encouraged him to do it? I mean, in the end, his country was left devastated. He knew what he was up against. Do you think he thought that God would help him because he'd done all his reforms? Any thoughts on these things?
Yes. Sargon II is killed in a surprise attack on the Assyrian camp before they've assembled all their weapons. They're far away on the other side of the Euphrates and the Tigris. And as one of the Assyrians said, people thought, I'll never come across, but I did. And so Chizkiyahu and other kings rebel, which means stop sending taxes. They didn't go to war against Assyria. Rebelling means not paying the taxes. And that's what the pasuk means, chatasi, and here I'll send this money plus a fine. That's normal in the Assyrian Empire. Okay, we didn't get away with it. Everybody understands. I don't know your culture, but the normal ones among us grew up watching a cartoon where there was a fox, a wolf, and a sheepdog. And in one of the episodes, there's a changing, and he clocks in, and the sheepdog is in the middle of whipping the other, and so they switch places, and sheepdog plays sheepdog, and the replacement wolf plays replacement wolf, so you come on. So we all know the game, and we know that if you caught me, okay, if you want to destroy me, it makes more economic sense for you, and the Assyrians were very astute, for me to pay the back taxes, plus a heavy fine, and let me keep on going. But we all understand that we're under the heavy hand of Assyria. As Nachum says, everybody celebrated because who didn't suffer at your hand, whoever that person is. That's the close of Nachum about Ashur. So Chizkiyahu and the other kings on the secular level thought, we don't have to keep on sending taxes across to Assyria. Egypt is right here anyway, or we'll be free. On the higher level, a Melech Yehuda serving Hashem with Shlomo Melech's Beis Hamikdash there, knowing that we are supposed to be free and serving Hashem, and lo yaver cherev ba'artzachem, even if we keep the promise, which Yoshio made the mistake thinking that he had perfected the society, and he didn't realize that there were people still worshiping idols in secret, and he didn't consult it properly and listen to Yirmiyahu and suffered for it. But a Melech Yehuda can feel, oh, Baruch Hashem, the enemy is away, and now we can build and we can be normal. And I don't need to have this shibud, which my wicked father did by saying, Avdacho bin Chani, I'm your servant, I'm your son, to Tiglath-Pileser. They got what was coming to them, those evil people, and were finally free. That's a normal thing to think. But then Hashem sent Sancherev.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay.
I have two questions. One is of the four opinions of where Steichoves is that Rav Barnea remembers, which would be the majority opinion? And what was the other question? I'll have to try and remember what the other one was.
I don't,
Time.
it doesn't ring a bell that there's a majority opinion. There are issues which everybody knows here are the players, and people have taken sides, so to speak. I'm not familiar if on this issue there is a majority opinion, but somebody who did work recently in the field in depth because of a salvage excavation claims to have totally disproved David Amit on that one, and said it's not that. And I forgot what he said he holds, but I haven't heard in other issues. They can tell, yeah, most people hold this, but nothing comes to mind here. I do want to mention, Michael, while you're thinking of your second question, that Professor Oda Lipschitz says in the prisms that we're talking about, Sancherev gives account of 201,000, and I forgot 50, whatever, 91 people that he took into captivity. Professor Lipschitz says we see this devastation when he talks about destroying 46 cities and their surrounding areas. We see this devastation in the Shfela and the Judean foothills, and it never recovered, even though it built back up to some degree. When you come to the Babylonian time, it did not reach what it was beforehand. And we have a chiddush, thanks to the excavations in Beit Shemesh, that Beit Shemesh itself was not destroyed and continued being a production center under Jerusalem to produce wine and oil apparently in particular, to raise money to pay the taxes to Assyria. It was not known. It literally just changed the history books. I held in my hand a jug handle with a rosette, which is from the time of Zedekiah, king of Judah, the last decade. And I held in my hand a Lamelech jug handle. In fact, one came out of my excavation area. I was an assistant supervisor. And I said, oh, I think this one has an inscription washed off. Yes. And that's from the time of Hezekiah. And what happened was that the city moved from one hill, from the western hill to the eastern hill for the last century and a half of the first temple, and it wasn't excavated till they did the current work on the highway, so it wasn't known. It literally changed the history books. Beit Shemesh did not have the fate of the rest of the Shfela, which was totally destroyed. Very shocking, but true.
I've remembered it was in connection with Lachish, the other question. You mentioned earlier that one of the places where it would say, Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu, when you see the place where the Sancherev and his camp were beside Yerushalayim. But you can't say that for the camp that he had beside Lachish, even if you identify it, because there was no nest there.
Correct.
Right.
No, forget it. You can tear Kriya on the destroyed city of Yehuda.
Right. It would be the opposite.
Right. The question is whether because Moshav Lachish is built, whether you wouldn't now. But when you talk about the city, Arei Yehuda, Lachish is one of those. Azekah is one of those.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay. First of all, we really appreciate your time. It's fascinating. I love how just these facts, again, you could be making all this stuff up, all these numbers, I know that, but I know you're not. Baruch Hashem.
No, I'm not wearing my tour guide license. If I put on my tour guide license,
Then you have to tell the truth.
I just got it renewed, in fact.
Oh,
Yes.
mazel tov. Very good. We really appreciate it. And as we continue through the rest of the Sefer, I may turn to you with questions here and there and your expertise. Just for your information, the plan, we took a few years to learn Sefer Shmuel. We're a few years into Sefer Melachim. When we finish Melachim, we're going to learn Eicha. And after that, we're going to go to Ezra Nehemiah. So we're going to do like that, the cycle. I don't want to go into Yeshayahu. I want to kind of take the end, the destruction, mourn that destruction through the Navi for a while, and then go into the Shivat Zion time period. So that's the next few years.
Ahead are you planning?
Oh, I figure if I keep planning like this, maybe Hashem will give me, like, I don't have Yeshayahu to tell me I have another 15 years, but maybe.
I hope it's much more.
I
would only comment that you're playing it conservative, because if you really wanted to take the bull by the horns, you would learn Daniel and then Ezra Nehemiah.
No, thank you. Being very conservative. No, thank you. I've learned it myself. I've never taught it, and it'll be maybe the next cycle, my next Gilgal. Maybe we'll see. Yeah, but really, thank you very much. Really,
just tell you, for the cherry on top, I flew to London. Every once in a while, there's an exhibition where there's so much Tanakh or history in one place that you need to get on the plane. Obviously, we're in the new reality.
Right.
So another time I got on the plane to go to London, there was a Babylon exhibition. And one of the things there were clay tablets explaining dream interpretation.
Whoa.
Literally, the rule, isn't that cool? The rules of Babylonian dream interpretation. And Daniel says, they couldn't figure out. We were about to be sliced. Can I please offer a
That's amazing.
different approach?
Amazing,
right.
amazing.
Cool,
Baruch
right?
Hashem. But
Okay,
thank you very much.
Is that another possible doctorate? To see if Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream was in accordance with Babylonian dream interpretation rules?
No, he got it from a different source. I also hear from the accent that you're not really cultured, but the Hebrew national commercial that we grew up with in the American 1960s was, we answer to a higher authority.
Power, the higher authority. That's right. That's right. Very good. I'm going to ask everyone just to stand for another minute, please, and we'll thank Barnea very much. Thank you so much, and a Purim Sameach.
Thank you, Barnea.
Thank you very much for Purim Sameach.
Okay, and if everyone could just stay on again for another minute, please. Thank you. Okay. There are people you meet sometimes in life who are just beyond description. What you saw now is the sliver of a tiny speck of this man's amazing knowledge. And look, why is it he's able to say, okay, open to Yeshayahu, this, because he's done this so many years. This is his life, archaeology and Torah together, history. He has, one of the things I mentioned, and this you can find online, he and his partner constructed a new model of the country for ancient Israel, that instead of running like this, top to bottom, goes from side to side. And when you go through it and you see a video that explains how you learn Chumash in a totally different way by doing it, and it actually makes so much more sense. He's actually set up, he tried to recruit me, and it was very sweet, before Corona, so about 2 years ago, to head a program to start putting his educational program into schools, like one-off or seminars, 2-3 day seminars in schools in the United States. And it's very flattering that he asked me to do that, but I just don't want to start a whole new part of my life at this point. But he's an amazing individual, and I really thank you very much, everybody, for being here tonight to see this. Should you have any follow-up questions, definitely feel free to send them to me, not for me to answer, But I'll pass them along to him, and I'm sure I'll get answers back right away. So, Yasher koach to everybody.
Thank you
I
for
wanna say
arranging, Rabbi. Thank you.
My
Rabbi.
pleasure.
Thank you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you so much.
Thank you so much.
Purim Sameach, and
Sameach.
we'll talk Bezrat Hashem next Sunday night at same time. As Mara starts getting a little later, we may push it a little bit to like 7:15. We'll see, but we'll talk about it another time. Have a great evening and a Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Thank you.
Right.